Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another illuminating episode of the Authors on Mission podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer here at Authors on Mission. Today, we're going to talk all about the transformative space where faith meets entrepreneurship. It's those moments in life when the safe path just doesn't feel like you're called to your soul anymore. You know, those moments when a comfortable corporate ladder suddenly feels like it's leaning against the wrong wall. Our guest today didn't just recognize that feeling, she embraced it. She jumped off that ladder, built her own stairway to purpose. So from leading global corporate teams to guiding purpose seekers toward their authentic calling, Brittney Tollinchi tells us all about what happens when you trade the known for the possible. She's a best-selling author, a dynamic coach, a podcast host, and what she calls a purpose warrior who's helping entrepreneurs align their businesses with profitability and deeper meaning. Today's episode is going to talk all about the wisdom in Joyful Entrepreneur Volume 3, and we can discover the framework for deliverance from career confusion, learn how we can unjuggle the struggle in our own lives. So get ready, grab your notebook, and let's learn all about this amazing framework. Brittney, welcome to the Authors on Mission podcast.
Danielle, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for this platform and for everything that you do for your audience.
Well, thank you for that. And to all of our audience listeners right here, before we popped on the call, Brittney spent a few minutes just literally complimenting and being so nice and so kind. So I think one of the first things we can probably learn from you, Brittney, is the power of positivity towards others. You're just, you liking my microphone, talking about the interview prep. It's great to build other people up. And I can see how that's one way that you build those connections with others, and you became such a dynamic coach by helping others and giving that purpose.
Yeah, I think it's important to see others, right? Like at the end of the day, that's what we all want. We want to be seen. We want to feel heard. We want to be known. And I think that when you just take a moment to pause and to actually say and recognize someone, I think that I know even in my own life it's been such a game changer. So yeah, I offer that gift up as much as I can, as genuinely, as authentically as I possibly can.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's something we can all kind of embody, because you never know when somebody might just need a little bit of a boost for their day. Like just hearing that unexpected little nice compliment or words of positivity one way or another. So that being said, you definitely have had an amazing career, and now you're the one helping others through that. So I'm wondering if we could back up a little bit, maybe tell us a little bit more about yourself, fill in the gaps from that introduction I gave, and tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are and what exactly led you to writing your first book.
Yeah, it has been a wild journey, that's for sure. So to kind of give you the overview, the story, I thought when I was little, all I wanted to do is I just wanted to grow up and I wanted to make money as like this business woman powerhouse. Even if that meant I was single and own a Wall Street apartment, like that was the vision for my life. And thank gosh that there were other plans. I will tell you that. Married to my high school sweetheart. We've got 2 beautiful babies. And I worked in high profile corporate career for about 14, 15 years in staffing, running teams on a global scale, winning awards across a $5.6 billion international organization for my leadership. And I had this moment. I was driving from Denver to Kansas City for a conference. And I had this moment where I found myself asking, what is this all for? What is all of this perseverance programming? What is this all high achieving? What is this all for? And it wasn't necessarily that I was burnt out or that I was unhappy with any part of my life. I just started getting really curious. And the thing about that, Danielle, is if you're going to ask that question, what is this all for? Be prepared to start finding some answers. And that's exactly what happened. The more that I started asking, what is this all for? The more I started feeling this tug and this whisper on my heart that so clearly the message was that I had done what I needed to do in corporate environments and that I needed to get out of the corporate box to have a different, bigger, more aligned calling and purpose and impact. And so for about a year and a half, I struggled through that. Nobody wants to leave their comfort zone. Okay. It's much more fun to stay in the comfort zone. It feels nice in our comfort zone. We like our comfort zone. And I was no different until I had a moment where my husband and I, we were sitting down for our 2024 goals. And I looked at him and I just knew that whisper had turned into a roar and that I was going to have to leave my corporate job. And so actually, like, putting myself almost through a pre-identity crisis. If I wasn't this corporate powerhouse, what was I? Who was I? If I wasn't contributing this large paycheck to the family, what was I? Who was I? So I put myself through all of those things, and it was the most difficult thing ever, but I knew that I needed to close one chapter so that was what was meant for me would find me, and it indeed did. So fast forward, I quit corporate, no plan, which is not recommended. Please, that is not I do not suggest that plan for anybody. Yeah, don't do that, okay? If you can, don't do it. But sometimes, in my case, that's what, again, was meant for me. So I quit corporate. 30 days later, I had a book deal. A few months later, I had a podcast. A few months after that, I'm on stages sharing my story. In November, the book goes bestseller. And now here I am, and I get to teach people how to start their own purpose-driven businesses. So that is like the nutshell of how all of this came together. But in particular to the book and how that came about, it was the connection that I had made several years prior, and the woman actually owned a publishing house. And when I made my jump out of corporate, she was one of the first people who congratulated me, just saying, I know you're meant for so much more. I can't wait to see like what you do with this. And I called her up because it was really important for me that I had a faith first business. And that's exactly what she was doing. And just kind of was asking, how do we navigate this? And told her my story about how difficult quitting this comfort was. And that quitting for so long, I had convinced myself that quitting was failure. And that it wasn't until I got on the other side of it that I realized that quitting is freedom, and the amount of faith that took. And in that moment, she was like, you've got to tell this story. And she had a book that was in progress there was a total of 13 authors. So it's an anthology. And each of us broke up. We busted business myths or myths in general. So my myth that I busted is that quitting is failure. And then we put on the armor of God. So, encourage readers to pick up their shield of faith, and then in doing so, you'll find that quitting is actually freedom. So that is probably way more than you wanted to hear from me, but that is the story.
Well, that's not way more. That's exactly what we wanted to know about. We wanted to know how you got into this and what led to the book, and you gave us an amazing overview of that. So I think the main thing that I'm noticing as kind of a pattern throughout everything you've mentioned is the idea of, I guess, battling your fears in stepping out of that comfort zone realm, which is, it kind of a theme overlying everything you just told me. In fact, when I was looking through all your materials earlier, there was this one quote that I found. I know you traded comfort for risk, predictability for unknown possibility, defined structure for uncharted freedom, and logic for obedient surrender. A really poetic way of saying it, but I'm wondering, it's probably really challenging, more so than you're even letting on right now. And obviously everybody listening today might even be considering something similar. So what kind of challenges was the most challenging for you? How did you navigate that challenge in terms of, when you first took that risk?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that came to mind was that, like, the trading logic for obedient surrender. So logic says, for instance, you don't leave a steady, great job. Logic says you have a family to take care of and you need that job. Logic says that, success looks like this particular image, or these things that most of us probably learn even at a young age, of like what we define what success for our lives looks like. And so that becomes the logic that we end up building our lives off. And at least that was for me. I had all the check boxes, had the husband, had the house, had the degree, had the blah, 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 blah. And then to still be at a crossroads of asking myself, like, what is this all for? There's a reason for that. And often a lot of folks, could chalk that up to like a lack of fulfillment or a lack of deep alignment with purpose. And sometimes that logical, like, hey, you don't walk away from a good job, for obedient surrender. When I talk about surrender, it's about really like that surrendering to yourself, surrendering to a higher plan. Mm-hmm. And that can be really scary. That can be really difficult. There's a lot of unknowns when you do that. It requires a lot of faith. It requires a lot of self-trust. And if you haven't really spent time in that space, which again, let's be really honest, most of us are going so fast in life that like to even give ourselves 15 minutes, just be like, where am I at today? What feels good in my life? What doesn't feel good in my life? A lot of times we're not even giving ourselves 15 minutes to ask those questions. I started giving myself 15 minutes and I started asking those questions. And over a year and a half, it got me from really living a life where others had defined what success was going to look like, what standards I was going to have in my life, to releasing it all, which is part of that obedient surrender, releasing it all, even though the world tells me that's crazy, and taking that big leap of faith. And it's been so rewarding and delivered over and over and over again in the last year and a half almost.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I think, first off, just taking those 15 minutes to ask those questions, like you mentioned, it's something important to do, kind of taking a step back, looking in the mirror, so to speak, thinking, what matters most. And the other thing that resonated with me about that is your idea of the obedient surrender, which is something you actually say a lot in, throughout your books and materials. I noticed another overlying theme, I guess you could say. So I'm wondering if you have like a specific example of a time that you went through this in your life, or, obviously creating the job, but any moments where you thought it was going to be terrible, but you found that first positive outcome that came of it.
Yeah. So I would say another example of like my obedient surrender walk, not that I thought it was going to be terrible, but that I definitely, it was never a part of a plan, or it required me to just show up with this unwavering, faithful yes, was when I was approached about starting a podcast. Okay. So I started my podcast, Unjuggle the Struggle, in June of 2024, and had no idea what podcasting would unlock for me, for my business, for other people. It was really just one of those like, hey, you should start a podcast. And it happened to be right time, right place, right person, where I was, again, in my season of yes. At that point in time, I didn't even listen to podcasts. I could tell you very little about podcasts, but I knew that it was something I felt pulled towards, something I felt called to, and this platform where I could just show up authentically to continue to give like myself 15 minutes, but then to also start teaching and helping others with how to give themselves 15 minutes to work through their just daily struggles too.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I can see how, even through the daily struggles, whatever it is, you've got to find that light of positivity, as you mentioned, and just, figuring out what you can learn from the experiences too is another factor. So kind of going into the book itself and the writing process a little bit, you mentioned that it was kind of a collaborative experience to write this. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit of light on that. Everybody listening today is either an aspiring author or upcoming author. They need to know these writing tips, and it's very different to work with somebody else or a team of people rather than on your own. I'm sure you could agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So for me, the experience was, think about it like an umbrella. Okay, so the big overarching theme was predetermined by the publishing house. Mm-hmm. So with that, then if you're going to try and coordinate 13 different authors to still all fit within an overlying theme, there are some things that are predetermined. So for instance, we knew that, hey, we were all going to bust a myth. We knew that we were all going to relate busting our myth to putting on a piece of the armor of God. So it's a Christian-based publishing house. And then from there, what happens is just this beautiful creative freedom where the publisher said, okay, here's your very few guidelines. Keep it under this amount of words. Here's our theme. And from there, go, and we'll talk to y'all later. So in that moment, you almost want to avoid talking with the other authors because you want it to be something that's so raw and true and authentic to you and your experience without influence. So that's exactly how it was set up. And then the other piece that's like really reigning through from a collaboration standpoint is I couldn't possibly like answer this question without saying that it was hands down a collaboration with my maker. I didn't plan on writing. None of it was planned. And so when I showed up with that yes, I remember sitting down and just getting into this really creative space because we've got the creative part of our brains and we've got the analytical part of our brains, and they don't work simultaneously. You really have to almost like turn one on, turn the other off. And so I got into this space where it was just like, okay, this is just my story, let it pour out. And I will tell you, it was over the course of a week that my entire part poured out of my fingers. I mean, at even odd hours of the night where it's like almost just like a waterfall pouring out of my body, out of my soul, through the keyboard and onto a screen. And it was a beautiful experience. I know I talked to a lot of other authors who mention how therapeutic and healing writing is, especially when you're talking about your own story. And I would say that my experience absolutely falls in line with that.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for sharing that. There's definitely many different types of collaborative writing. Sometimes people co-author a book and they're working chapter by chapter with somebody every day. But in your case, it was more like closed doors, almost like a game, like to see which manuscript's going to be different from the others and how the stories are going to intertwine together. So that's kind of really fun to even see the completed product and see how everybody else had to contribute.
Yeah, very much so. And then, getting to meet the other authors and getting to hear the way that they had, lived parts of their lives under myths that we all believe, like, oh, I have to control this outcome, or, oh, it's my business. It's not for a higher purpose. It's something for me. And how, those are myths that really actually end up like suffocating our businesses. So it was so beautiful to learn so deeply from others as well.
Definitely. And that's interesting that you say that. You're learning from others while also teaching others and also, refining your writing skills too, learning about writing. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of a full circle win-win type situation.
100%.
All right, Brittney. Well, we're all wondering, do you happen to have a copy of the book with you today? Can you shine a little light on that cover design and talk a little bit about it? Let's take a look.
I do. All right. So Awaken, Renew, Transform is right on the cover. Joyful. It's bright yellow, so you can't miss it.
I love it. And bright yellow, that's a perfect way to catch the eye, get everybody interested, spark that curiosity that makes them want to flip open the pages and learn a little bit more. I like that too, because yellow is all about positivity, and that's definitely something that is an overarching theme of everything you do. So that's amazing.
Awesome.
So all that being said, it must have been really hard to balance everything at once. I mean, you have 2 kids who you described to me as wild in the messages. I can only imagine. I worked as a teacher too. I know what it's like to be around kids all day, but then have to go do your podcasting, write your book, speaking engagements even. How do you balance all that?
Yeah, structure is a good thing. So I will share that in corporate, there's a lot of structure. You know what's allowed, you know what's not allowed, you know that you're always going to have a Monday 8 a.m. meeting, and that's that. And so especially when going from living a life in a very, very structured environment to then now being like having this opportunity and this freedom to really structure my day as I saw fit, I very quickly noticed that without a structure in my day, that I would get to the end of the day and I almost felt like I couldn't even tell you what I had done that day. And it didn't take me very long. I mean, I'm talking within my first 30 days out of corporate that I realized that the best thing that I could do for myself, for my business, for my family, was going to be to put some structure in place. So very quickly, I started going back to the things that I knew fueled me, things like journaling, things like reading, making sure that those were priority first thing in the morning before the family even got up. And then also too, I really just put an emphasis on being present. So when I was, doing breakfast with the kids, I was present. I wasn't trying to be 10 steps ahead on my podcast or trying to post on social media. I was really present in those moments. And then what ended up happening is like the quality of those moments increased. So then the quality of the following moments also increased. So when I was so present in journaling, that unlocked a different level of maybe even like grace or compassion or presence with the kids. And then when I was present with the kids, that did the same thing in my work. And before you know it, it's this beautiful like momentum generator that is based on truth, that is based in purpose alignment, that is based on the things that, again, I really value in my life, like quality time with the kids, like pouring into my business so that I can serve and impact far and wide, like pouring into my writing. I knew for a week straight, like, hey, until it was done, the writing needed to be a priority, and letting my family be a part of that. They knew mom was writing, and then mom got to share what I had written. And so it's just keeping it all together, not necessarily keeping it separate, but keeping it all together by really focusing on being present in each of those moments.
That's definitely the case. I mean, I understand what you mean completely by being present and knowing, being aware of what's going on. Myself, I was a teacher, I'm doing podcasting, I'm a ghostwriter and editor. There's a lot to scramble and balance. So I know exactly where you're coming from and how balance in one area does kind of overflow into the other buckets of your other places in life. That's an amazing tip to consider. You might not think about how your family life directly impacts the other life, but then I get it. Sometimes I'm trying to write somebody's manuscript, for example, and my thoughts are thinking about whatever's going on in my personal life or vice versa. So yeah. Completely understand. And structure is important too. A lot of times, you might be tempted to, I don't feel like working on this project today. I'm going to sit down and watch Netflix instead. But that's kind of something you need to give yourself, that structure and that maintenance. I'm sure you maybe dealt with the same kind of thing a little bit.
Yeah, I think too, when like really going back to just how aligned the work is, how aligned my life is, things like showing up consistently, showing up and being present, it's so much easier than when I think back to the times in my life when I was maybe forcing that flow, when I was trying to negotiate with myself, okay, well, I've got this meeting, I should get on early, I should not. Like when I was, I love Shelley Paxton. She mentions it was like when you're shoulding all over yourself. And it was like, I think about when I was shoulding all over myself versus this total space of abundance that I'm in now, where it's aligned. They're the things that are most important to me. And I feel grateful to be able to do that. And so it really is the state of flow that comes out of it.
Yeah, I like that you said that, the state of flow, because that's kind of how you want it to be. You mentioned when you started writing that there's ideas just flowed, for example. So I can see how that cross compares between different areas of life. So speaking a little bit about, the book itself, one thing that you mentioned a couple times is how this is very faith-based. So I'm wondering, if you can share a little bit of light on that. I'm sure combining faith with business isn't the typical, approach all the time, although it is very interrelated. So mind talking a little bit more about that? Did it require research? Is it more innate beliefs? Let me know.
Yeah. Oh, what a great question, Danielle. Thank you. Thank you for that. Especially in corporate, faith and work is not necessarily something that intersect. And so I think that was something that I was craving. When I took that year and a half of knowing what that intuitive nudge was, but before I could actually do it, to learn to be still, like to learn to pay attention to my intuition, I started praying a lot more. I personally started reading the Bible a lot more. And what I found was that the more that I got to know me, the more that I started to really get to know like my maker and really internalize that there was a much bigger, better plan at play than what maybe I would have written as my own story. And because that was so instrumental in all of the pieces of my life, I knew that with work, I wanted that to be more prevalent. I wanted to build a business where that faith first perspective was not only allowed, but like welcomed and even sought after. And I absolutely have seen that the workplace is craving a little bit more faith. I think the workplace is craving a little bit more authenticity, and that's part of it. So it was absolutely internally led. And then there was this beautiful thing that happens when you connect with other faith-filled entrepreneurs. You start seeing the similarities and you start learning from each other, and you start seeing the way that, you know, God has absolutely shaped their business because they did the same thing. They started following and living a life aligned to a higher plan and a deeper purpose than kind of what, you know, quote unquote, they all say we should be doing. And there's deep meaning and abundance and fulfillment in that.
Definitely. And I really appreciate you sharing that with me because, you know, it's good to shine a light on those different perspectives and, you know, how faith really does guide us regardless of, you know, where you are in life. So I can see how kind of getting out that corporate word really impacted you and allowed you to connect more with this other side. So you mentioned reading the Bible more, you know, researching more. So I guess in a way that kind of was research, right? Looking at the Bible and having that introspection. Yeah,
absolutely. You're reminding me that, so when I wrote the chapter, part of what the publishing house, part of the assignment that the publishing house gave us is that we would connect our truth. So like that quitting is freedom. We would connect that truth back to a Bible verse. I had never, ever, so I've been a Christian all my life. I have never, ever quoted a Bible verse. I could not tell you one off the top of my head, nothing like that. And so then to be met with this assignment face to face, it was a wonderful experience where that research was almost like forced. And the way that I learned, like how much I learned in the writing of the chapter, even about pieces of my faith that I hadn't previously explored. So that was another element of like this writing. Again, I see this theme with authors all the time, the way that writing like uncovers and brings pieces of you to the surface that you didn't even know existed. Same thing. I didn't even know how much my body was like craving and needing more of that faith-filled alignment, and writing absolutely gave me that opportunity.
I like that you said the word like craving. It's something almost if you're like listening to your body and trying to figure out what exactly it is that you do need. Yeah. That means you need to have a lot of self-awareness in that case, I would assume, right?
Yeah. Very much so. Very much so.
So, you know, kind of moving forward from this, the book is one of many different things that you are involved in and dabble at and shine with. So I'm wondering if you'd like to share a little bit more about, for example, your speaking engagements, every other realm here. Everybody listening today is probably very inspired by what you've been saying. So what else can they look forward to in checking out what you have to offer and all that?
All the things, right? All the things. So yeah, I'm still very much so in my season of yes. And so where this is all going, I just get to, again, obediently surrender. You're right. That's totally a theme for me. That's my jam. So anytime I'm doing any type of speaking, you know, it's actually helping people really dive into their purpose. Like if I'm working with corporate teams, it's a lot of burnout work that we're doing and how like leaders need to learn how to quit the right things. So that's all over my own personal website, which I am at. You'll connect in the show notes. So website will be in there. I also have my podcast. So it's like I said, Unjuggle the Struggle. And really what that is, it's a space where I show up weekly, and to some degree, we are all on some type of struggle bus in life, or sometimes we're in front of said struggle bus. But when we are, it's just a place where I'm unjuggling it. So for instance, like I recently broke my ankle. So I have been unjuggling on the podcast, like what happens when an injury messes with our plans sometimes, or how it stalls our momentum, and the mental component to that as much as the physical component. So definitely check out the website. I'm on socials, LinkedIn, Insta, all the fun things.
Yeah, perfect. So we're going to put all of those links into the description box today. So if you're interested in checking out everybody, go ahead, click on over, do a little bit of exploring, see which of these mediums most resonates with you, because I think it's something we can all apply to our lives regardless of where we are in our careers or what our experiences have been. It's important to take a look and figure out, asking yourself those questions like you mentioned, applying this to your life. So thank you. I think this is something we should all be checking out and learning more about.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle.
And I'm wondering, are there any other tips, words of wisdom, or advice you'd like to share with the audience today?
Ooh, great. Another great question, Danielle. I really appreciate you. I would say what's just coming through is that if you've got an urge to write and you haven't yet, if you think you've got a book in you in any way, shape, or form, just do it. Just do it, because it is one of the reasons why I'm so grateful to be on this podcast, is because I really do believe that the missions inside all of us, they're meant to be shared. They're meant to come out. They're meant to pour out of us. And if you give yourself that space to just try it, just like let it be easy, play with it, just see where it goes. The gifts that writing and actually telling your story or bringing your creativity to life, the gifts on the other side of actually doing the thing, they will be so much bigger and greater than anything you ever would have imagined.
I agree with that. That's one of the leading tips I always give to authors. Just do it. Just get out that Word document, start typing, get your ideas on the paper. You don't know where it's going to lead. And I guess that perfectly resonates with your season of yes and all of that. Just give it a try, see where it leads. Just say yes.
Just say yes. Just say yes.
Well, I appreciate that. And everybody listening today, again, if you've been inspired by today's conversation, connect with Brittney at all of her links. Pick up her best-selling book. Don't forget to subscribe to her channels and check out more about her, because she has some amazing tips and insights for us. Brittney, thank you for coming on today. You've got some amazing pieces of wisdom for us. You've shown us that the path to success isn't always between, following the conventional staircase, but finding something that balances your spiritual fulfillment and your business achievement. So I really appreciate everything you've shared with us today. Thank you for that.
Oh, I so appreciate everything that you're doing for authors or potential authors. And just thank you. Keep going. This is an amazing resource. Thank you
for that. And again, anybody, if you're listening and you feel that nudge, remember Brittney's words about, trading comfort for risk, predictability for possibility. Sometimes it's, just a risk you have to take. You have to just do it, like Brittney told us. So until next time, this is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that your mission matters, your message deserves to be heard, and sometimes the most faithful step is one that leads you away from what's comfortable and toward what's calling. So keep writing, keep growing, and keep serving, and we'll see you on the next episode of Authors on Mission podcast. This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.